I never thought I'd be one of those people, the kind who can say, "My cat talks to me." But as I stood in front of that shelter cage, staring into the curious eyes of a scruffy little cat, I couldn't shake the feeling that something extraordinary was about to happen. It was a Saturday afternoon, the kind of quiet day that made you feel like you had all the time in the world to kill. I'd been scrolling through the local shelter's website for a while, distracted and uncertain, when I stumbled across her profile. A tabby mix, they called her, a special needs cat who had been there far longer than most. Something about her description struck me. The words seemed to jump off the page, begging me to come see her. I made the call to the shelter without even thinking it through. When I walked through the door, the first thing I noticed was the smell familiar and comforting, a blend of fresh wood and old memories. The shelter volunteer, a woman with tired eyes and a soft smile, led me down the row of cages to a corner where the quietest ones always waited. She pointed at the small cage where the cat was curled up, staring at me. I felt an instant connection. Her fur was a patchy mix of grays and oranges, and she had this look in her eyes as if she knew something I didn't. "Her name's Bella," the volunteer said, unlocking the cage. "She's been here for months. I think she's just waiting for the right person to come along." As she opened the door, Bella slowly stretched out, her body moving with a cautious grace. But then, as she stood up, she did something I never expected. She spoke. It wasn't a meow or a yowl or anything you'd expect from a cat. It was a clear, soft voice, almost like a whisper, but so clear. "Hey you." She blinked at me, and then, as if to confirm what I'd just heard, she spoke again. "You gonna take me home?" I froze. My heart skipped a beat. Did I just hear what I thought I did? The volunteer saw the look on my face and laughed nervously. "It's not uncommon for them to make odd sounds when they're nervous," she said. She might have just startled you with a weird noise, but trust me, she's a sweet one. I tried to shake it off, convincing myself that maybe I was imagining things. Cats don't speak, but the way Bella looked at me, with those big eyes full of intelligence, told me otherwise. For the next few minutes, I hesitated. My mind raced. Was I hearing things? Could I really adopt a cat that seemed ... different? But then, Bella took a step closer, sat down right at my feet, and meowed again. "You're gonna take me home, right?" That's when I knew. This wasn't just any cat. Bella wasn't just talking to me. She was speaking to me, calling me to take her home. The ride home was filled with an eerie silence, the kind that only an unusual situation can bring. Bella, the cat who spoke, sat on the passenger seat beside me, her eyes scanning the world outside the window as we drove through the quiet streets. I had thought she would settle into the car, curl up on the seat, and perhaps doze off, like any other pet. But Bella wasn't just any cat. She had this air of mystery about her, something almost too human for a creature of her kind. She was still, except for the occasional twitch of her tail. Every so often, she would glance over at me, as if to remind me that yes, she was different. And yes, she was speaking to me. It wasn't a simple meow or a scratchy pit. It was as if Bella understood everything I was thinking, and she wasn't shy about letting me know that. "Nice drive," she said softly, her voice clear and distinct. As she gazed out the window, I nearly swerved the car. My hands tightened on the steering wheel, and my heart skipped in shock. "Did you just..." I started, but I couldn't finish the sentence. I had to be imagining this. Cats don't talk. They just don't, right? But then, to my surprise, Bella turned her head towards me. She tilted it slightly, as if considering my question. "You heard me, didn't you?" I swallowed hard. I couldn't believe what was happening. It had only been a few hours since I first laid eyes on her at the shelter, and now she was speaking to me as if we had known each other for years. I had no idea what to say. So, I just focused on the road and kept driving. When we arrived at my house, Bella jumped out of the car before I could even open the door for her. She trotted towards the front steps like she had lived here for years. I followed her, feeling like the ground beneath me was shifting as soon as we entered the house. Bella did something I didn't expect. She walked directly into the living room, jumped onto the couch, and stretched out, settling herself comfortably in the middle as if she belonged there. "Nice couch," she murmured, her tail flicking to and fro cozy. I stood in the doorway, still in disbelief. She wasn't even acting like a cat. She was acting like, well, like someone who had lived here long before I even adopted her. I shook my head. "What is going on?" I muttered. To myself, Bella glanced at me from her perch on the couch. Her eyes narrowed, as if she had just heard me. "You're thinking too hard," she said, letting out a tiny yawn. "I'm just here to stay." I stood there for a few moments trying to process everything. I didn't even know what to do. I had brought home a talking cat, but was she really talking? Was it real, or was I just losing my mind? For the rest of the evening, Bella stayed in the living room, observing everything quietly. I tried to act normal, trying to convince myself that this was all some strange fluke, but no matter what I told myself, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was ... off. She was more than just a cat. She was a cat with a purpose, and I had no idea what that purpose was. But I knew that life would never be the same with Bella around. Later that night, I made myself a quick dinner: scrambled eggs and toast. As I sat down at the table, Bella followed me into the kitchen, jumping up onto the counter and sniffing at the air. "Smells like breakfast," she said, her voice clear as day. "Good choice." "I like eggs." I laughed nervously, shaking my head. "What is happening?" I muttered under my breath. But Bella, completely unbothered, began to lick her paws, as though everything was perfectly normal. "Don't worry, it'll be fine," she said. I paused. "What do you mean?" "You can't. Just relax," she interrupted. "You're going to be fine. I'm here. We're going to be great together." That was it. That was when I realized that Bella wasn't just a cat. She was here for a reason, and somehow, she had chosen me. I wasn't sure what the future would hold with a talking cat at my side, but one thing was for sure, life was going to get a lot more interesting from here on out. The next few days passed in a surreal blur. Bella had quickly settled into my home, making herself comfortable in every corner. Every morning she would greet me with a soft meow, though I was still coming to terms with the fact that she was no ordinary cat. And she didn't just meow. Every so often she would say something that caught me completely off guard. It started small. Phrases like "good morning" or "I see you're late again" would slip out at the most random moments. Each time, I would freeze, wondering if I was hearing things. But when I looked into her eyes, I could see that she was fully aware of what she was saying, and more importantly, why she was saying it. It wasn't just random chatter. It was as if she knew exactly what I was thinking. One morning, I woke up to find Bella already perched on the kitchen counter, watching me as I made coffee. "You're slow today?" she remarked, her tail flicking back and forth. "Did you get enough sleep?" I turned around, startled. "Did you just?" "Yes, I did," she interrupted, licking her paw nonchalantly. "You need more sleep, by the way. You've been staying up too late." I stared at her, open-mouthed. "I've never had a cat give me life advice before," I muttered. Bella blinked slowly, her eyes narrowing with a look that could only be described as knowing. "I'm not just any cat," she said with a soft purr. "You'll get used to it." I didn't know how to respond. Bella's words were becoming more meaningful, almost too meaningful for comfort, but I couldn't ignore the odd feeling that she was trying to tell me something important. She was a cat who spoke, and she wasn't just filling the silence with random words. Every phrase seemed to carry some hidden depth. That afternoon, I took her outside for the first time. It was a beautiful day, with the sun shining brightly and the wind carrying the scent of fresh grass. I thought Bella would want to run around, maybe chase a bird or two, but instead she just walked alongside me, looking up at the sky as if contemplating something far beyond what I could understand. "Don't you want to explore?" I asked, glancing down at her. She simply shook her head, her eyes focused on something in the distance. "I'm fine right here," she said, her voice almost wistful. "I've seen enough of the world to know that it's not always what it seems." I frowned, unsure of what she meant. "What do you mean by that?" She looked up at me then, her eyes soft but knowing. "People are always looking for something more. They think they're missing out, that there's a bigger picture. But sometimes, the most important things are the small moments, the ones we overlook." I felt a sense of calm wash over me. Bella's words, simple as they were, seemed to resonate deep within me. It was like she was trying to tell me something that I had been too busy to notice in my own life. As the days went on, Bella's behavior became even more intriguing. She would often sit by the window, staring outside, as if she were waiting for something, and every time I would ask her what she was thinking, she would simply reply, "It's not time yet." I found myself growing more and more curious about her, what she knew, what she was waiting for, and why she had chosen me. I had always been a practical person, focused on logic and reason, but Bella's presence was slowly making me question everything I thought I knew. One evening, after a particularly quiet day, I sat on the couch, lost in thought. Bella jumped up beside me, curling up next to me, in her usual spot. She didn't say anything at first, just nuzzled against me, as if seeking comfort. It was then that I realized something important. Despite everything that was happening, despite the talking, the strange insights, and the growing mystery surrounding her, Bella wasn't here just to teach me lessons, or make me question my life. She was here to connect with me. I sighed, a weight lifting off my chest. "I still don't understand how you can talk," I said softly. "But I'm glad you're here." Bella looked up at me, her eyes filled with something I could only describe as affection. "I'm glad too," she said, her voice quieter this time. "Sometimes, we find each other when we need it most." That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that Bella was more than just a pet. She was a presence in my life that I didn't fully understand yet, but I was beginning to realize that she had brought something into my world that I had been missing: connection, peace, and the promise of something more than what I had settled for. Days turned into weeks, and with each passing day, Bella's presence in my life felt more and more like a strange, yet comforting, routine. Her words, which once felt like an anomaly, were now an expected part of my day. Sometimes, they were funny, other times they were wise beyond belief. But always, they were something I couldn't ignore. It was a Saturday morning when things took an unexpected turn. I had woken up to find Bella sitting at the window, staring out into the street. The sun had barely risen, casting a warm glow over the neighborhood, and there was an odd stillness in the air. The usual sounds of the city, the distant hum of traffic, the chirping of birds, the rustle of leaves were quiet today, almost as if the world itself had slowed down. "Bella?" I called softly, approaching her by the window. She didn't turn around, but she responded, her voice quiet but clear. "It's coming," she said, without looking at me. I frowned, stepping closer. "What's coming?" I asked, feeling an unsettling chill run down my spine. "What do you mean?" Bella's eyes remained fixed on the street below, her expression unchanging. "You'll see. Soon," she murmured. "It's been a long time." I didn't know what she was referring to. I thought about asking her more, but something told me I needed to wait. Bella had a way of speaking that was both cryptic and profound, as if she were seeing things that I couldn't yet understand. I had learned by now that when she spoke like this, it was best to let it unfold in its own time. Over the next few days, I noticed that Bella's behavior had changed. She wasn't as talkative as she had been, and she seemed more distant, as though lost in thought. She still greeted me in the morning, but there was a subtle difference. Her eyes, which once sparkled with mischief, now seemed clouded with something deeper, something unspoken. One evening, I decided to take her for a walk in the park. We had made it a routine by then, and it was one of the few times Bella seemed to truly enjoy herself. As we walked along the trail, Bella kept her usual pace, trotting beside me, but this time, she stopped a little further ahead. I didn't think much of it at first, assuming she had just gotten distracted by something, but then I heard her voice again. "This is where it happened," she said, her voice low, almost a whisper. She was standing at the edge of the park, near a small creek that ran through the area. The soft babbling of the water was the only sound in the otherwise silent evening. I walked toward her, unsure of what she meant. "Where? What happened?" I asked, my heart beginning to race. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she sat down by the edge of the creek and stared at the water for a long time, her tail flicking, absent-mindedly. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she turned to face me. "The place I was before you," she said simply. "I've been waiting for you to come." I felt a lump form in my throat. "What do you mean, before me? We're in a shelter, right?" Bella shook her head slowly, her eyes narrowing as she gazed at the water. "I was in many places," she murmured, almost as if she were speaking to herself. "But this one, this place, it's where I found you." I didn't understand. How could a cat know something like that? How could Bella, an animal, be aware of things that seemed far beyond the realm of normal understanding? There was something ancient and knowing in her eyes that sent a shiver down my spine. I kneeled beside her, trying to keep my voice steady. "What do you mean by found me?" She looked up at me then, her gaze soft but serious. "You needed me, and I needed you. This connection we have is not by chance. We've been through this before, together, but you've forgotten." I swallowed hard, trying to grasp what she was saying. "Forgotten? I've never met you before, Bella." Bella's gaze lingered on me for a moment before she spoke again. "No, not this time. But we have met before. In another life, another world. Maybe you didn't believe it, but you're remembering now." Slowly. I didn't know what to say. I had always been grounded in reality, always thought of myself as someone who didn't let wild ideas take over. But Bella, she wasn't just a cat. She was a presence. And every time she spoke, I felt like I was on the verge of discovering something I wasn't sure I was ready for. For the rest of the walk, Bella was silent. She seemed lost in thought, her eyes far away, as if she were searching for something that only she could see. When we returned home, I tried to shake off the unease that had settled over me. But no matter how much I tried to rationalize her words, they lingered. The next day, I decided to take Bella to the vet. I couldn't explain why, but I felt like something was off. Like Bella was carrying something I didn't fully understand. Maybe it was the odd way she had spoken, the cryptic messages, or just the strange connection I felt with her. I couldn't ignore it any longer. At the vet's office, Bella was her usual self, calm and collected. But when the vet came into the room, I saw Bella's eyes widen, just for a second, before she turned her head away. It was subtle, but I noticed it. "Is something wrong?" I asked the vet, still uneasy. The vet smiled reassuringly. "Nothing at all. She seems perfectly healthy." But Bella's reaction had me questioning everything. Why had she reacted like that? It wasn't like her to show any sign of discomfort, especially not around strangers. That night, I stayed up late, scrolling through old photos on my phone, trying to distract myself. But Bella's words from earlier kept swirling in my mind. "We've been through this before, together. You've forgotten." I shook my head. Maybe I was reading too much into it. But then, as I glanced down at Bella, who was now resting at the foot of my bed, I saw something in her eyes, something familiar, a flicker of recognition. And that's when I realized Bella wasn't just talking to me, she was guiding me. Something deep inside me knew that I wasn't just her owner. We had shared something before, and somehow, Bella was here to remind me of it. The next few days felt like a whirlwind. I couldn't shake the feeling that Bella was hiding something from me, something important. Her behavior had shifted once again, growing more distant, and at the same time, more intense. She would still speak from time to time, offering advice or observations about the world around us. But I felt that beneath her calm exterior, there was an urgency in her eyes, like she was waiting for something. One night, I found myself sitting on the couch, scrolling through old family photos on my phone, trying to escape the growing sense of unease. Bella had been quiet for hours, curled up in her usual spot beside me. The air in the room felt heavier than usual, and the silence was thick, almost suffocating. It wasn't like Bella to stay so still. "So quiet, Bella," I called softly, my voice barely above a whisper. She lifted her head, her golden eyes meeting mine with an intensity that sent a shiver down my spine. "We need to talk," she said, her voice calm but filled with a weight I couldn't ignore. "It's time for you to know the truth." I sat up straighter, my heart racing. The truth? What was she talking about? I had never felt more uncertain in my life, but deep down I knew that Bella was not just a cat. She had never been just a cat. She was something more, something far beyond my comprehension. I took a deep breath and set my phone aside. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice shaking slightly. Bella stood up and walked slowly towards the window, her tail flicking behind her as she gazed out into the night. "I wasn't always here," she began, her voice soft but steady. "I've been with you before, not in this life, but another." I blinked, unsure of what to say. "Another life," I repeated, almost incredulously. "Bella, you're not just a cat," she interrupted, turning her head slightly to look at me. "I never was, and neither are you." I was silent for a moment, processing her words. "What do you mean?" I asked again, this time more urgently. Bella turned to face me fully, her eyes filled with a sadness that was so human, so familiar, that it took me off guard. "We were connected before, in a past life, a different time. We were part of something bigger, something important. But something happened. I lost you, and I've been trying to find you again ever since." My heart pounded in my chest, and I felt a knot form in my stomach. "But how? How is this possible?" "I don't have all the answers," Bella said softly, "but I know that we were meant to find each other again. This connection we share, it's not an accident. You've been through so much in this life, and you've forgotten who you truly are. But I'm here to help you remember." I shook my head, feeling overwhelmed. "I don't understand. You're telling me that we have been together before, in another life." Bella nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving mine. "Yes, and I've been waiting for you to wake up to it. To remember." I felt a deep sense of confusion and disbelief swirling within me. But as I looked into Bella's eyes, something stirred inside me, a feeling that I couldn't quite explain. Maybe it was the depth of her gaze, or maybe it was the way her voice held such an undeniable truth. "You want me to remember?" I asked, my voice barely audible. Bella didn't respond immediately. Instead, she padded over to the couch and jumped up beside me, curling herself into a ball, as she often did when she sought comfort. "It's not just about remembering," she said quietly. "It's about understanding who you are, who we are. There's a reason you feel connected to me. There's a reason we found each other again." I sat there for a long time, processing her words. My mind raced, and the logical part of me tried to dismiss everything she had said. But deep down, I couldn't ignore the pull I felt, the strange sense of familiarity every time Bella spoke. I reached out and gently stroked her fur, trying to calm my thoughts. "What do we do now?" I asked, unsure of what she expected from me. "We wait," Bella replied softly. "We wait for the next step, the moment when you'll be ready. You have to trust that everything is unfolding as it should." As I sat there, lost in my thoughts, I couldn't shake the feeling that Bella wasn't just talking about this life. She was talking about something much bigger, something that spanned across time and space. It felt like she was guiding me towards some kind of awakening, but what exactly that awakening was, I had no idea. The next day, I took Bella for another walk. The air was cooler, and the sun had barely risen, casting a soft glow over the world. Bella trotted beside me, her pace slow, almost deliberate. "Bella," I said, breaking the silence, "I want to understand. I want to know what you mean by all of this. How did we... How did we know each other?" She looked up at me, her eyes filled with a quiet wisdom. "It's not time for that yet," she said, her voice soft but insistent. "When you're ready, you'll remember. But for now, just know this. You are not alone. You never have been." I paused, taking in her words. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. As if, despite all the chaos in my life, there was something bigger at play. A force, a connection, that had been quietly shaping my path all along. I couldn't explain it, not yet. But I knew one thing for sure. Bella was more than just a talking cat. She was my guide, my companion, and perhaps, just perhaps, she was here to remind me of something important, something I had forgotten. And as we walked on, the weight of her words settled in my heart. We were about to uncover something far greater than either of us had expected, and whatever it was, I knew that I wasn't alone in this journey anymore. The days that followed felt like a mix of normalcy and mystery. Bella's presence in my life had become a steady force, but it was clear that there was so much more to her than I had realized. Every day, she would share little pieces of wisdom, small snippets of advice that seemed so profound, yet so simple. I had started to adjust to the fact that Bella wasn't just a cat. I couldn't explain it, but there was something about her something that made me believe her every word. She wasn't simply speaking for the sake of speaking. Each phrase, each word, held meaning, as if she were a guide, and I was the one who needed to follow. But despite this connection, I still had questions. What was I supposed to do with this knowledge? Why me? One afternoon I sat on the couch, flipping through an old book that had been gathering dust on the shelf. Bella was sitting on the windowsill, her eyes scanning the outside world with that same distant, thoughtful look she often had. The quiet atmosphere in the room was almost comforting, but there was an undercurrent of tension that I couldn't shake. I put the book down and turned toward her. "Bella," I said, my voice hesitant, "what am I supposed to do with all of this you said I have to remember, but I don't even know where to start." She turned to face me slowly, as if she had been expecting my question. "You're already doing it," she said softly, her voice steady and reassuring. "You're not meant to know everything all at once. The answers will come, in time. You just have to be open to them." I frowned, still unsure. "But I don't even know what I'm waiting for. How can I be open to something when I don't even understand what's happening?" Bella jumped down from the windowsill and padded over to me, sitting at my feet. She looked up at me with her wise, golden eyes. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like I wasn't alone in this confusion. "You're not meant to figure it out alone. That's why I'm here." I let out a long sigh. Leaning back into the couch, it's just all so overwhelming. Every time you speak, it feels like you're hinting at something huge, but I don't know how to process it. Bella's tail flicked thoughtfully as she curled up beside me. "Sometimes, the biggest answers come when you stop searching so hard. You're too focused on the how and why. What you need is to trust. Trust yourself. Trust me." I closed my eyes, letting her words sink in. It wasn't easy, but I knew she was right. I had spent so much of my life searching for logical answers, always needing a clear explanation. But this wasn't like anything I had ever experienced before. Bella wasn't a puzzle to solve. She was a guide, and my journey with her was one of discovery, not certainty. The next morning, I decided to take a walk with Bella in the park again, hoping the fresh air would help clear my mind. As we walked along the familiar trail, I couldn't help but notice how much calmer Bella seemed. She was more at ease, almost as if she knew something I didn't. "Bella," I said, glancing down at her as we strolled, "do you know what's going to happen next? What I'm supposed to do?" She didn't look up at me immediately, but after a moment, she turned her head, her golden eyes meeting mine with a depth that made my heart race. "You're already doing it," she repeated, her voice soft but filled with meaning. "You've always known. It's just time for you to remember." I stopped walking, letting her words wash over me. But how? How do I remember something I've forgotten? Bella's gaze softened, and she walked a little ahead, stopping at the edge of the park where the trees grew thick and tall. "You won't remember it all at once, but there will be signs, moments, small things that will trigger the memory. You have to trust yourself enough to follow them." I stood there for a moment, trying to process what she had said. It wasn't easy. How could I trust something so intangible? How could I trust that these signs would lead me to the truth? But as I looked at Bella, standing there with such quiet confidence, I felt something shift inside me. I realized that I had been searching for control all this time. But control wasn't what I needed. What I needed was to let go and trust. Trust in Bella, trust in myself. After a few moments I nodded, more to myself than to her. "Okay," I said quietly. "I'll try." As we continued our walk through the park, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. There, under the shade of a tree, was an old bench. It wasn't anything special, just a simple wooden bench. But for some reason, it felt important. I walked over to it, Bella following me with her calm, measured pace. When I sat down on the bench, I felt a strange sense of peace wash over me. It was as if I had been here before, as if this bench held some sort of significance that I couldn't quite place. Bella hopped up beside me, curling up comfortably at my feet. "This is where it starts," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Here, and you'll know when the time is right. You'll remember it." Took a deep breath, my mind swirling with everything Bella had said. I didn't have all the answers yet, but for the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of calm. Bella was right. I didn't have to understand everything at once. I just had to trust that the answers would come when they were meant to. As we sat there, the world around us seemed to slow down. The soft breeze rustled the leaves in the trees, and the sunlight filtered through the branches, casting dappled shadows on the ground. I closed my eyes, letting the moment wash over me. Maybe Bella was right. Maybe the answers were already there, waiting for me to notice. I just had to be open to them. The days since our conversation in the park had been quiet, yet something felt different. I couldn't shake the feeling that Bella was guiding me towards something important. But what was it? What was I supposed to be understanding? It was like being on the edge of a discovery. But the final piece of the puzzle still hadn't clicked into place. I had taken Bella for more walks, hoping that something would spark a memory, a sign, something to help me understand the depth of what she was trying to tell me. But each time, I felt like I was searching for something that I couldn't quite touch. One evening, I found myself sitting on the porch, a glass of water in my hand, watching the sun dip below the horizon. Bella had been unusually quiet that day, keeping to herself as she lay curled up in the corner of the living room. But now, as the sky grew darker, she walked outside and sat beside me, her gaze soft yet knowing. "I've been thinking," I said, breaking the silence, "about everything you've said. About what we're supposed to do next. I don't know if I can do this." Bella looked up at me, her golden eyes steady and unblinking. "You already are," she said calmly. "You're doing it every day, even when you don't realize it." I let out a slow breath, feeling the weight of her words settle into my chest. "But I don't know what to do. I still don't understand what you're trying to tell me." Bella's tail flicked gently, and she leaned in, resting her head on my knee as if to offer comfort. "You're scared," she said softly. "Scared to trust what you don't understand. Scared of the unknown. But that's where the magic happens when you let go of control." I swallowed, my heart heavy with uncertainty. "It's hard, Bella. I've always needed to understand things. I've always needed to have a plan. But this, this is different. I don't know what's happening, and I feel lost." Bella's gaze softened, and she slowly stood up, her eyes never leaving mine. "Being lost is okay. Sometimes, we need to lose ourselves in order to find something greater. But you have to trust that you're not really lost. You've just forgotten where to look." I blinked, processing her words. "And where should I look?" Bella didn't answer right away. Instead, she padded over to the far side of the porch, staring out into the night. The moon was rising, casting a soft light across the yard, and the air was thick with the scent of fresh grass and earth. It was a peaceful moment, but there was an underlying tension, as though something was about to shift. After a long silence, Bella finally spoke again. "Look inside yourself. You've been searching for answers in all the wrong places, but the truth has always been within you. You've always known, and now, you're ready to remember." I sat still, feeling the weight of her words sink in. Look inside myself. Could it really be that simple? All this time, I had been trying to figure things out with my head, searching for logic and reason. But maybe Bella was right. Maybe the answers didn't lie outside of me at all. Maybe I had been looking in the wrong places. I stood up, feeling the cool breeze on my skin as I looked out into the night. Bella had always been there, guiding me without me even realizing it. And now, it felt like she was leading me to something bigger, a deeper understanding, a connection I couldn't fully grasp yet. "I think I get it," I said softly, more to myself than to Bella. "It's not about finding the answers, is it? It's about remembering." Bella nodded, her eyes glowing in the moonlight. "Exactly. You've been carrying these answers with you all along. It's time to stop fighting it. Time to let go of your fear and trust what you know." I stood there for a long moment, the weight of her words slowly sinking in. Everything I had been questioning, everything I had been uncertain about, it was all starting to make sense. It wasn't about forcing the answers. It was about letting them come to me, trusting that I had the strength to understand when the time was right. "I'm scared though," I admitted, my voice barely a whisper. "What if I can't do this? What if I can't remember? What if I'm not ready?" Bella patted back to my side, nudging my hand gently with her head. "You are ready?" she said quietly. "You've always been ready. You just had to believe it." Tears welled up in my eyes as I looked down at her. She wasn't just a cat. She was my guide, my companion. And now, I realized that she was helping me understand something much bigger than I had ever imagined. The next morning, something felt different. I woke up to find Bella sitting by the window, as usual, staring out into the quiet morning. But this time, I didn't feel the weight of uncertainty. I felt a sense of calm, as if the fog in my mind had lifted and I could see things more clearly. I walked over to Bella, who turned her head slightly as if she knew I was there. "Bella," I said, my voice filled with newfound clarity. I'm ready. I don't know what's next, but I trust that you'll show me." She looked up at me with those wise eyes, her tail flicking softly. "You always were," she said, her voice gentle and knowing. "Now, let's see what happens when you finally trust yourself." As I stood there, looking down at Bella, I realized that this wasn't just about remembering something from the past. It was about embracing the future with open arms, ready to face whatever came my way. And Bella, with all her wisdom, was going to be right there by my side. The days that followed were quiet but full of peace. Bella and I had settled into a rhythm, a comfortable routine where words weren't always necessary, and the silence between us felt like understanding. I had come to realize that our connection was not bound by logic or resent it with something deeper, something timeless. As the weeks passed, I began to understand more about what Bella had been trying to tell me. She wasn't just a talking cat. She was a guide, a reminder that sometimes the answers don't lie in the things we can touch or see, but in the quiet spaces within us, where we're free to trust ourselves and the connections that come our way. That one evening, as we sat together on the porch, watching the sunset, Bella turned to me, her eyes soft but filled with something I could only describe as contentment. "You've come a long way," she said quietly, her voice carrying the weight of everything that had happened between us. "You've started to remember, and that's all that matters." I smiled, the truth of her words sinking deep into my heart. "I don't think I'll ever fully understand it, but that's okay. I'm learning to trust." Bella nodded, her tail flicking gently. "And that's the most important lesson. Trusting yourself, trusting what's inside of you. That's where it all begins." The sun dipped lower, casting a soft golden glow across the yard, and for the first time in a long while, I felt at peace. I had spent so much of my life searching for answers, for control, but now I understood. The answers had always been within me, waiting to be recognized. Bella, in her quiet way, had helped me rediscover that. She had reminded me that sometimes, it's not about finding all the answers. It's about embracing the journey, trusting the process, and allowing life to unfold as it was meant to. I never thought I'd be here, I said, my voice filled with gratitude. With you, with all of this, but I'm glad I am. Bella glanced up at me, her golden eyes sparkling with something beyond comprehension. You always were meant to be here, she said softly. We just had to remember it together. And in that moment, everything made sense. Bella wasn't just my cat, she had always been more than that. She was a part of my journey, a piece of the puzzle that had been missing for so long. And now, as we sat together in the fading light of the evening, I knew that whatever came next, I would face it with her by my side. The world outside continued on, the hum of life going unnoticed by most. But for us, it was enough to simply be, to be present, to trust, and to remember that sometimes, the most extraordinary things are the ones we least expect. Bella's head rested on my knee. As I looked out at the stars beginning to appear in the sky, it was a quiet moment, but it felt like the most important one. I'm not alone anymore, I whispered to her, my heart full. No, she replied softly, her voice barely above a whisper. You never were, and with that, I understood. Bella hadn't just changed my life, she had shown me the truth, that even in the most ordinary moments, there's magic, and all it takes to see it is the courage to trust, to remember, and to embrace the journey.